What if parking your car in front of your own house got it towed, a $600 fine, and police threats? In Idaho, Maria Gomez's simple convenience turned into an HOA nightmare. Stay tuned for a story of control, injustice, and a community's fight to reclaim their streets. In the serene suburb of Meadowview Estates, Idaho, where rolling hills met quiet streets and the scent of pine drifted through the air, 42-year-old Maria Gomez lived a life of hard-earned stability. A single mother and nurse, who worked night shifts at the local hospital, Maria had bought her $280,000 split-level home in 2020, a modest haven where she raised her 15-year-old son, Diego, amidst the peaceful surroundings. On the chilly evening of April 12, 2026, Maria parked her old sedan in front of her house after a grueling shift, the engine shutting off with a soft hum, the street lamp casting a faint glow on the car's faded paint, a moment of relief as she headed inside to rest. Meadowview Estates was governed by a strict homeowners association, led by 60-year-old President Evelyn Harper, a retired school principal who enforced rules with a rigid hand. Evelyn saw the neighborhood as a picture of order. No clutter, no deviations, and certainly no cars parked on the street that could obstruct traffic, even in front of one's own home. The HOA bylaws stated, "No street parking is permitted at any time," with a $600 fine per violation. A rule Evelyn applied with zero tolerance, claiming it preserved the neighborhood's clean look. That evening, as she drove through the streets in her SUV, its engine humming softly, she spotted Maria's sedan parked curbside, its presence a clear violation in her eyes. Her brow furrowed, her hands tightening on the steering wheel, and she muttered to herself, "A car on the street. That's getting towed tonight." At 9 p.m., just as Maria settled onto her couch with a cup of tea, the soft clink of the spoon against the mug a comforting sound. The sharp wail of police sirens pierced the evening calm. She stood, her slippers scuffing the hardwood floor as she peered through the window, the glass fogging slightly with her breath. A police SUV rolled into the cul-de-sac, its tires crunching on the pavement, red and blue lights flashing against the dark sky. Two officers stepped out, their breath visible in the cold air. The lead officer, 48-year-old Stephen Grant, adjusting his jacket as he approached, followed by a tow truck, its engine rumbling loudly. "Ma'am, we've had a complaint about illegal parking," Officer Grant said, his voice gruff and unyielding, cutting through the quiet night. Maria's heart raced, her hands trembling as she opened the door, the hinges creaking softly. "A complaint? It's my car, in front of my house," she said, her voice rising with disbelief, the words echoing in the chilly air. Evelyn, who had followed in her SUV, stepped out with a stern expression, clutching a fine notice in her hand, her scarf fluttering in the breeze. "Your car obstructs traffic and violates HOA rules," she declared, her tone sharp and authoritative. "That's a $600 fine, and we're towing it." Maria's eyes widened, her voice shaking as she gestured to the empty street. "It's not blocking anything. This is ridiculous," she protested, her words overlapping with the sound of Evelyn tearing the fine notice from her pad, the paper ripping with a harsh sound. Officer Grant, known in Meadowview Estates for his close ties to the HOA after years of responding to their complaints, wasn't swayed. "You need to comply, or we'll take further action," he snapped, his tone icy as he spoke into his radio, the static crackling with his command. "Tow the vehicle, subject must comply." Maria watched in horror as the tow truck operator hooked her sedan, the clank of the chains loud in the night, the vehicle lifting off the ground with a groan of metal, its tires scraping the pavement as it was dragged away. "That's my only car. I need it for work," she shouted, her voice breaking, the cold air biting at her skin. Officer Grant stepped closer, his flashlight beam blinding her as he issued a warning. "Pay the fine and retrieve your car, or you'll face additional charges," he growled, his voice low, the radio crackling again with his update. "Subject non-compliant." Evelyn handed the fine notice to a neighbor who had come out to watch, the paper crinkling as she returned to her SUV, its engine rumbling as she drove off, leaving Maria standing on her porch, the street now empty, the night colder without her car's familiar presence. Maria couldn't let this go, not just for herself, but for every resident in Meadowview Estates who relied on their vehicles for daily life. Word of the incident spread through the neighborhood, shared during morning walks and whispered at the local grocery store. The residents, many of whom had faced similar HOA overreaches, were furious, and a group of neighbors, led by 37-year-old mechanic Carlos Rivera, organized a protest to support her. The next afternoon, at 3 p.m., dozens of residents gathered in the cul-de-sac, their footsteps echoing on the pavement as they marched with signs demanding parking rights, their voices rising in chants that reverberated through the streets, a defiant stand against the HOA's control. Families parked their cars along the curb in solidarity, their engines silent, children holding handmade signs, a symbol of resistance in the quiet suburb. The protest caught the attention of the Meadowview Post, which ran a story titled "Nurse's Car Towed by HOA, Neighbors March for Justice," the reporter's voice amplifying the community's anger through a local radio broadcast. Encouraged by the support, Maria decided to sue the HOA, hiring a lawyer, 44-year-old Jessica Moore, who specialized in property rights cases. Jessica argued that the HOA had no authority to regulate street parking on public roads, and that the police had overstepped by enforcing a civil dispute, her voice steady and commanding in the courtroom. The trial drew a crowd of Meadowview Estates residents, their footsteps shuffling as they filled the benches, their murmurs a quiet buzz of anticipation. Maria took the stand, her voice thick with emotion as she recounted the night, her words carrying the weight of her struggle. "I parked my car to rest after a 12-hour shift," she said, her tone breaking. "They took away my lifeline." Jessica presented legal precedents protecting the right to park on public streets, her arguments sharp and compelling, the rustle of documents loud as she handed them to the judge. But Evelyn and the HOA board were unyielding. Evelyn claimed Maria's car threatened traffic flow and aesthetics, her voice nasal and sharp, her fingers tapping impatiently on the table. Officer Grant defended his actions, insisting Maria's refusal to comply justified the tow, his tone gruff and unapologetic. The judge, a 66-year-old known for upholding HOA authority, sided with the HOA, his gavel slamming down with a resounding thud that silenced the room. "The bylaws prioritize community standards," he declared, his voice booming, the echo lingering. Maria was ordered to pay the $600 fine plus $4,000 in HOA legal fees, the verdict a devastating blow that left her staring at the floor, her shoulders slumped in defeat. The aftermath was grim. The HOA, emboldened by the ruling, tightened parking restrictions, announcing the new rule at the next meeting, Evelyn's voice echoing through the community center's speakers with a new fine of $800 for violations. Maria, financially strained, had to borrow money to retrieve her car. The sound of Diego's worried questions, a constant reminder of the cost. Meadowview Estates, once a place of quiet convenience, became a battleground, with residents fearing the HOA's unchecked power. Maria stopped parking on the street, her sedan now squeezed into her narrow driveway. The chilly evenings, a haunting reminder of the freedom she'd lost. The neighborhood streets emptier without the familiar sight of her car. And so, a simple parking choice became a battle for justice in Meadowview Estates, Idaho. Was Maria wrong to park in front of her own house, or did the HOA go too far with their rules? What do you think? Should a nurse's car be towed for the sake of aesthetics? Share your thoughts, and join us next time for another tale of HOA madness. Until then, keep fighting for what's right. Thank you for listening.